The UN Pathfinder tore through the thick, churning atmosphere of Nithrax 6, its hull rattling like an old tin can in a windstorm. Inside, the crew braced for impact, white-knuckled and cursing in at least 5 different languages. Captain Elias Voss tightened his harness and let out a slow breath. He had survived 3 planetary landings gone wrong, and he was not about to let this be his 4th. Across the cramped cockpit, Dr. Lillian Cho was furiously swiping through data on a holoscreen, muttering about electromagnetic fluctuations and unpredictable gravitational pockets. "We lost primary thrusters 10 seconds ago," she announced, voice clipped but steady. "Great," Voss said dryly. "Secondary thrusters?" "They were never there to begin with," Sergeant Marco Mack Delgado piped up from back, his grin infuriatingly casual. "You know, after we burned through 'em escaping those trigger-happy pirates?" Voss shot him a look. "And whose idea was that?" Mack's grin widened. "Hey, if it worked, it wasn't stupid." Arya Nyambi, the team xenoanthropologist, interrupted with a much more pressing concern. "The atmosphere's denser than predicted. We're coming in too fast." Voss turned his attention back to the rapidly approaching surface. The scanners were a garbled mess, probably the result of the planet's notoriously erratic magnetic field. The only thing he could make out was a vast stretch of dense jungle below, bioluminescent flora casting an eerie glow in the fading light. "Brace for impact," he shouted. The Pathfinder crashed through the towering canopy, tearing through branches the size of small buildings before finally skidding to a halt in a clearing, throwing up dirt and glowing spores in a swirling maelstrom. For a long moment, there was silence. Then Mac let out a low whistle. "I'd give that landing a solid 6 out of 10, he said. "Points for style, but we really got to work on the deceleration phase." Voss unbuckled his harness and rubbed his temples. "Cho, damage report." Dr. Cho was already working on it. "Hull integrity is compromised but stable. Comms are fried. Power cells are intact, but thrusters are completely shot. So," Max said, stretching, "we're stuck on a planet classified as one of the most dangerous in the galaxy, surrounded by an ecosystem designed to kill us, and with no way to call for help." "Fantastic." Arya leaned against the nearest console, eyes scanning the dimly lit jungle beyond the cockpit windows. "At least we're alive." "For now," Voss muttered. First contact with the planet. Stepping outside was like walking into a fever dream. The jungle pulsed with unnatural life, the air thick with the scent of something both floral and vaguely metallic. Towering, vine-covered trees dripped with luminescent sap, and massive, curling ferns shimmered in hues of deep indigo and gold. The ground squelched beneath their boots, alive in ways none of them want to consider too closely. Dr. Cho crouched by a cluster of mushroom-like growths, her fingers running over the spongy surface. "The bioluminescence is reacting to movement," she murmured. "Some kind of defense mechanism?" "Or a warning," Arya added, her voice tinged with both excitement and unease. Mac was less concerned with the flora and more focused on the fact that something was watching them. Guys," he said, tapping the butt of his rifle. "I think we got company." The jungle fell silent. The air itself seemed to tighten around them. Then, from the shadows, a Shirak emerged. It was at least 4 meters tall, its elongated reptilian body covered in dark, shifting scales that reflected the glow of the plants. It had 6 limbs, 4 powerful legs and 2 elongated, clawed arms that flexed with unsettling precision. Its eyes, gleaming like molten gold, locked onto the humans with cold intelligence. It didn't roar. It didn't snarl. It simply moved, its body a coiled spring of predatory grace. Voss didn't waste time. "Move!" The team scattered as the Shirak lunged, its claws tearing through the space where Voss had been standing only a second before. Mac raised his rifle and fired, the plasma around ricocheting harmlessly off its thick scales. "Fantastic," he grunted. "It's bulletproof." Dr. Cho ducked behind a fallen log, eyes darting between the creature and their wrecked ship. "We need a bigger distraction." Arya, ever the dreamer, shouted, "Maybe we can communicate with it." Max snorted. "You first." The Shirak was fast, too fast for a creature its size. It closed in on them, claws slashing through the thick undergrowth like paper. Then Voss saw it. Their ship's damaged fuel cells, half buried in the wreckage, leaking unstable plasma. Mac, how much charge you have left in your rifle? Mac didn't question the shift in tone. He checked the display. About 2 shots. That's enough. Aim for the fuel cells. Mac grinned. Now you're speaking my language. The Chirac lunged again. Mac fired. The plasma round struck the leaking fuel, igniting it in an explosion of blue fire. The jungle shook, and the Chirac screeched, its body thrown back by the force of the blast. It tumbled into the undergrowth, momentarily stunned. Silence followed. Then, from somewhere in the distance, an unearthly howl echoed through the jungle. Voss exhaled. That's probably not good. Dr. Cho dusted herself off. We just announced our presence to everything in a 5-mile radius. Arya looked at the smoldering undergrowth. At least we're not dead? Mac holstered his rifle. Yet. Voss ran a hand through his hair, looking at his team, his people, standing amidst the ruins of their ship, deep in one of the most hostile places in the known galaxy. They were stranded, alone, hunted, and yet, he grinned. All right, folks, time to show the universe why humans survived Class 13 Deathworlds. The jungle hadn't stopped moving since the explosion. The glow of the burning wreckage cast flickering shadows against the dense foliage, and every rustle in the underbrush sent the team pivoting, weapons raised. The air smelled of charred metal, scorched vegetation, and something else, something sharp and animalistic. Voss took point, keeping his voice low. We need to move. Now. That blast painted a giant bullseye on us. Mac adjusted his rifle, glancing back at the still-smoking crater. Look on the bright side. That thing's not chasing us anymore. Arya shot him a dry look. Because it's dead? Mac grinned. Because it's rethinking its life choices. Dr. Cho checked her scanner, frowning. We're not alone. Multiple heat signatures closing in. Voss cursed under his breath. Not more of those 6-limb nightmares. Cho shook her head. No, this is different. Organized and armed. First contact with the Nithri. The first arrow zipped past Voss's head, embedding itself into a nearby tree with a hiss. The bark sizzled where it struck, the weapon's tip coated in something that fumed on impact. Poison, Cho whispered. Hostiles, Mac corrected, diving behind cover as more arrows rained down. From the treetops and the dense undergrowth, figures emerged, tall, live beings covered in dark, flexible armor, their elongated heads crowned with curling, bone-like ridges. Their skin was a deep violet, streaked with markings that shimmered when they moved. Their eyes, silver and unblinking, locked onto the humans with predatory calculation. They carried weapons both primitive and advanced. Bows with energy-charged arrows, jagged blades crackling with an unseen force. Not just hunters. Warriors. The Nithri. Arya's breath caught. This is impossible. One of the Nithri stepped forward, their armor adorned with iridescent plates that marked them as a leader. Their voice was a smooth rasp, words unfamiliar but layered with meaning. Arya stepped forward, hands raised in a show of peace. We mean no harm, she said, switching to the universal trade dialect. We are travelers, stranded. We. The leader cut her off with a single word. It was not a question. It was a declaration. Deathworlders. A ripple moved through the Nithri ranks, expressions shifting between disbelief and something darker. One warrior took a half-step back, eyes narrowing as if reassessing the situation. Arya blinked. You know of Earth? The leader's silver gaze locked onto her. No one survives a Class 13 Deathworld. It is legend, a place where no sentient species can thrive. Voss exhaled. Well, hate to break it to you, but that's home. The Nithri leader studied him for a long moment, then let out a low, humorless sound, a laugh. We thought you were Vorzil, they said at last. Our war does not concern you. Arya stiffened. War. As if summoned by the word, the jungle behind them erupted in a wave of fire and thunder. The Vorzil attack. A plasma bolt streaked through the trees, exploding against the ground in a spray of molten rock and dirt. The Nithri warriors scattered, hissing warnings to one another. From the shadows, new figures emerged. The Vorzil were everything the Nithri were not. Hulking, brutish creatures with armor fused directly into their flesh. Therefore, arms carrying heavy plasma rifles and curved melee weapons designed for brutal, close-quarters combat. Their skin was a mottled green, scarred and burned from countless battles. Their eyes gleamed crimson, void of fear or hesitation. The Vorzil leader, a towering brute with serrated metal crest embedded in its skull, lifted its weapon and barked something in a guttural, grinding tongue. A challenge. Voss didn't need a translator to know what it meant. Mac fired first. The jungle erupted into chaos. Plasma bolts streaking through the dark, Nithri arrows slicing the air, Vorzil blades flashing. The team dove for cover, their odds worsening by the second. Voss took stock fast. The Vorzil had firepower and brute force, but the Nithri were faster, more agile. The problem? They were losing ground. Dr. Cho, crouched beside him, shouted over the din, "Their tech is malfunctioning." Voss followed her gaze. Some of the Vorzil's weapons were shorting out, sparks dancing along their armor. "The magnetic field," Cho said. "It's interfering with their gear." Voss grinned. "Then let's make it worse." Turning the tide. "Mac, you got any surprises left?" Mac, who had just clubbed a Vorzil over the head with his rifle, wiped blood off his face. "Depends. What kind of reckless, borderline insane plan are we talking?" "Localized EMP. We fry their systems completely." Mac grinned. "I love when you talk dirty." He yanked a power cell from his belt, flipped open a small panel, and started rewiring it on the fly. Sparks flew as he overloaded the charge. Arya covered him, firing quick bursts to keep the Vorzil from advancing. "Mac, any time now." Almost. A Vorzil charge, a massive blade swinging down. Mac detonated the charge. A wave of energy rippled outward, crackling through the air. Vorzil weapons sputtered and died. Their armor, heavily relying on tech enhancements, seized up. Some collapsed outright, their exoskeletons locking in place. The Nithri wasted no time. With fluid, practiced precision, they moved in for the kill. Aftermath. When the dust settled, only the humans and Nithri remained standing. The Vorzil leader, still half-functional, snarled at Voss. "This is not over." Voss leveled his weapon. "I really hope it is." The Vorzil glared at him, then turned and retreated into the jungle. Silence. Then the Nithri leader stepped forward. "You fought with cunning. Not like warriors, but something else." Voss dusted himself off. "We fight to win, no matter the odds." The leader studied him, then nodded slowly. Perhaps the legends were true. Arya, still catching her breath, looked between them. "Does this mean we're allies?" The Nithri leader's silver eyes glinted. "It means you are no longer myths, and that is far more dangerous." The Vorzil may have retreated, but the jungle hadn't stopped hunting them. Voss, Mac, Cho, and Arya stood among the carnage, their breaths heavy, their bodies aching. The Nithri warriors moved to the battlefield, slitting throats of any Vorzil still twitching, collecting arrows and speaking in hushed, urgent tones. The silver-eyed leader, who had yet to introduce themselves, stepped toward Voss. "You fight like no species we have encountered," they said, voice calm, yet carrying the weight of a judgment, not with brute strength, not with speed, but with adaptation. Voss wiped blood off his face, meeting their gaze. "We fight to win." The Nithri leader studied him for a long moment before nodding. "You wish to leave this world. To survive." Cho scoffed. "Obviously." The leader's expression didn't change. "Then you must understand something, Deathworlders. On Nithrax 6, nothing is given. Everything is taken. If you want a way off this planet, you will have to earn it." Arya, ever the optimist, stepped forward. "You need something from us." The leader's silver eyes gleamed. "Indeed." The Nithri's offer. The humans followed the Nithri through the jungle, deeper into their domain. The bioluminescent flora thickened, casting the world in hues of violet, gold, and eerie green. The air hummed with unseen life, distant growls and clicking echoes hinting at creatures lurking just beyond their sight. As they walked, Arya whispered to Voss, "It's incredible. Their culture, their tactics. It's like they've adapted to war as a way of life." Max snorted. "Yeah? Well, I'd rather not be conscripted." After nearly an hour, they emerged into a clearing unlike any other, a towering structure woven from living trees, their trunks shaped into elegant, spiraling towers. Suspended walkways glowed with embedded bioluminescence, and strange, hovering platforms moved between levels with an effortless grace. It was a city alive and pulsing. Cho exhaled. "This is stunning." The Nithari leader gestured toward a central platform, where an ancient-looking figure awaited, taller, thinner, their markings more intricate. Their gaze was piercing, even from a distance. "High Sage Kar, keeper of our people's fate," the leader introduced. Kar studied the humans with quiet calculation before speaking. "Your arrival has changed the course of a war that has lasted centuries. The Vorzil will return, stronger, angrier." Voss crossed his arms. "So, what do you need from us?" Kara's silver gaze sharpened. "You will kill their warbringer." The impossible task. The room fell silent. Mac let out a low whistle. "Oh, is that all? Want us to overthrow their government while we're at it?" Arya shot him a look before turning to Kar. "Why us? Your warriors have fought for generations. We know their tactics, their patterns, their weaknesses, and yet we have never won." Voss frowned. "What makes you think we can succeed where you haven't?" Kara's lips curled in something almost like a smile. "Because you are Deathworlders." The word hung between them, heavier than before. "The Vorzil do not fear us," Kar continued. "They have learned our ways. But you are an unknown variable, a myth made flesh, and they fear what they do not understand." Cho muttered. "And we're just supposed to waltz into their stronghold and kill the most powerful warlord they've got?" Kara's expression remained unreadable. "If you do, the Vorzil forces will collapse into chaos. We will strike, drive them from this world." Mac raised a brow. "And if we don't?" The Nithari leader who had escorted them, Sauron, they finally introduced themselves, answered, "Then you will die here alone." The plan. Voss weighed the options. They had none. "All right," he said, running a hand through his hair. "Tell us everything you know about this warbringer." Tkar nodded approvingly. "His name is Korthak the Unbroken. He commands their forces from a mobile fortress, one that moves on biomechanical legs, never staying in one place for more than a day." Cho groaned. "A walking fortress." "Of course." Sauron smirked. "Your Deathworld mind will think of something." Voss exhaled. "If we do this and we survive, you'll help us off this rock?" Tkar inclined their head. "You will have earned your way." Mac cracked his knuckles. "Then let's figure out how to kill a walking tank." The Vorzil mobilized. As the humans poured over stolen Vorzil schematics, movement flickered in the sky. A ship, sleek and unfamiliar, descending beyond the jungle. Arya stiffened. "That's not Vorzil tech." Cho's expression darkened. "It's worse." Max swore under his breath. "Galactic Council?" Voss clenched his jaw. "Someone just noticed we're not supposed to be here." And just like that, their mission became a race against time. The sky burned. Streaks of light cut through the alien heavens as the Galactic Council's ships descended, their metallic hulls gleaming like judgment incarnate. They weren't here to negotiate. They weren't here to save anyone. They were here to erase the problem. And that problem was humanity. Voss stood on the ridge overlooking the Vorzil fortress, a monstrous, biomechanical behemoth stomping through the jungle, its massive legs pulverizing trees and carving scars into the land. Korthak the Unbroken was inside, surrounded by warriors, armed to the teeth and expecting a fight. Fine. He was going to get one. Voss turned to the others. "We're out of time. Either we hit them now, or we all get wiped out by the council." Mac grinned, cracking his knuckles. "I say we make history." Arya exhaled, steadying herself. "No one's ever taken down a Vorzil warbringer before." Cho checked her gear. "Then let's be the first." Storming the fortress. The attack was fast, brutal, and pure chaos. Max at the first charges, blowing apart the Vorzil's perimeter defenses. Voss led the charge, cutting through confused warriors as they scrambled to respond. Arya moved like a ghost, her rifle picking off high-value targets before they could react. Cho, ever the wild card, had hacked a Vorzil war drone and sent it rampaging through their own ranks. By the time the alarms reached the inner sanctum, the Vorzil were already losing. The final battle, Korthak the Unbroken. The doors to the Warbringer's chamber were massive, forged from darkened metal, engraved with the scars of 1,000 battles. They slammed open as Voss and the others stormed inside. And there he was, Korthak the Unbroken, 9 feet tall, a monster of fused flesh and machinery, his forearms wielding plasma axes, his cybernetic eyes burning red. He grinned, stepping forward, voice like grinding steel. "You think you can kill me, little Deathworlders?" Voss didn't waste breath on words. He fired. The battle that followed was nothing short of legend. Korthak moved with terrifying speed, his axes carving through the air, melting the floor where they struck. The team dodged, weaved, countered, each playing their part. Matt detonated explosives, forcing Korthak back. Arya landed a perfect shot, cracking his cybernetic plating. Cho, against all reason, hacked into his neural implants, disrupting his movements for just a second. A second was all Voss needed. With a final brutal shot, he drove a plasma blade straight into Korthak's core, overloading his systems. The Warbringer let out a final, defiant roar. And then he fell. The Vorzil saw their leader die by human hands. And just like that, their empire crumbled. The Galactic Council's arrival. The Council's ships descended as the battle ended. Tall, elegant figures in pristine uniforms stepped forward, their expressions unreadable. "You have broken the balance," their leader intoned. "You are an anomaly, a threat." The team readied their weapons. They had just survived a war, and now they were supposed to just roll over for some bureaucrats? Not a chance. Sarin, the Nithari leader, stepped beside them. "So are we," he said, "and we stand with the Deathworlders." From the treetops, hundreds of Nithari warriors emerged. The council hesitated. This was not the outcome they expected. Arya smirked. "Looks like the galaxy has new rules now." Epilogue: The Deathworlders' Legacy. Weeks later, the Vorzil were driven from Nithrax 6. The Nithari reclaimed their world. And the humans? They were offered a place among them. Voss looked out over the jungle one last time. The scars were already fading. So, he mused, "We came here stranded and ended up rewriting the rules of an entire war." Matt grinned. "Sounds about right." Arya chuckled. "Think the rest of the galaxy will be ready for us?" Cho smirked. "They'll have to be." And with that, humanity stepped into legend. Deathworlders. Survivors. Unstoppable.